want to do elevator pitches first? So you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, why don't we do that? You guys go around. So,
I'll start.
Share. Good.
Hi, Filippo from Itiamo. I'm one of the co-founders. Itiamo selects and scouts the best Italian artisanal producers and bring them to sell outside their comfort zone, mostly in the US, through a marketplace with subscription boxes.
It's delicious. Actually, they're really
Nice. Good.
I'm Ken Nguyen. I'm the co-founder of Saucy Sauce. We are bringing Vietnamese cuisine to the masses in the United States.
Great.
I'm with him. Yeah, so they're amazing. They're 100% fresh, ready to use. Oh, I'm Kate. Sorry, we're so excited that you're here, by the way.
I'm excited to be here.
We've been looking forward to you.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
so amazing Vietnamese sauces and marinade, dressing, dipping, cooking, finishing. They're super versatile, super fresh.
Great.
Leticia Castellanos from Moji, authentic Mexican flavors, cooking sauces and marinades.
Great.
I'm with Ken and Kate, working through sauces.
Okay.
Me too, I'm with Ken and Kate.
You guys travel deep.
Well, Ryan Wilsey, co-founder of Proteins Protein Chips. It's a nice salty snack alternative to protein bars and shakes out there.
How do they taste?
Fantastic.
Delicious.
Fantastic.
So we have some in the office. I'll give you some.
Yeah, I like the taste of the chips that are good.
Yeah, awesome.
We're Steve and Chris with Plasma Nutrition. We process protein and increase absorption by the body.
What does that mean exactly?
So a typical protein, about like 35% just kind of passes through your body, goes to waste. We've reduced that number to less than 5%. So more of the protein that you ingest actually ends up being used, so you can, gain strength faster, put on muscle.
Good. Wow. I feel healthy just being in the room.
I'm with Steve, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Pietro and I'm with Filippo and Itiamo.
Okay.
Okay.
Why not?
You can introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Archie and I'm co-founder of Samocat Sharing System. We are the city bike of kick scooters. So we are trying to implement a network of kick scooter tree everywhere in the city and solve the last mile problem.
A network of
kick scooters.
Kid scooters.
Kick scooters.
Kick scooters.
Kick
Okay,
scooters.
cool. Huh. Like the bicycle?
Yeah,
Exactly, like the bicycle, but we're light and foldable. We're about 8 times much more space friendly. The footprint is way lower. You can drive that, ride it on the sidewalk. You can fold it and bring to the subway. So that's
starting in New York.
And we started in Germany, and I would say besides. Parallelly, we're starting also in New York.
Cool.
And I'm Frank, and we are with Urban X. So we're Urban X here in the back.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. I am David McInerney, Fresh Direct. You guys are familiar, everyone?
Yes.
Anybody use us?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a couple, okay.
I'm in Dallas. No.
You're what? You're in Dallas, yeah.
I live in Dallas.
All right, so what I thought I would do is I have about 150 slides of graphs. A lot of them are in really a lot of detail, so you may not be able to see all the numbers, so you may want to come closer. That's a joke. I don't use graphs. I have 150 slide pictures. And the reason I have pictures is because I think they tell a pretty good story. I guess you guys are all pretty much just starting out, right? I assume first business or close to your first business. I went through that 15 or 16 years ago and we're still in it, and maybe there's some learnings we can share along the way. I call it show and tell because that's what it is. The idea is to get you some visibility into what we do that may not be readily apparent from the outside. So, where am I?
Is it working?
I mean,
No.
no.
There you go.
Let's just see. Okay. All right, so it doesn't go backwards. How do I go back the other way? Can I go back?
Yeah, that back button, the up button should go back.
I feel like I'm going the other way, right?
to Australia. This
Try to get me up to the top.
That's forward. This upper button is back. That's
Is that back?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's back. All right, so we're going to start again. So this is our store. So a regular bricks and mortar store, you walk in, you see displays. With us, it's different. It looks like this. And those are all the different departments below it. We started here in New York. This is where we started. And we're now in 5 different states and a couple major cities, primarily New York and Pennsylvania. We started in 2002, so that's July. We're coming up on that. So was that 14 years ago where we opened, and it took us about 2 years to open up the business, to actually get it up and running. And the focus was to sell fresh food. The name of the company is Fresh Direct, so we focus on fresh. We focus on meat and seafood and vegetables and cheeses and prepared foods and a bakery. And we sell all of this, right? These are what we call CPGs, or packaged goods. But fundamentally, when we launched the business, we said we wanted to focus on fresh because that's what would differentiate us. We knew that eventually, if there were competitors that were to come into the market, big people like Amazon or Walmart, they would likely have more buying power than us, and we couldn't be just about this. Ordering by now is pretty common to everybody, right? You can order on a laptop or on tablets or on even phones like that. That's a superimposed picture of a farmer we work with. I just put his face in there for a talk that I did once. And just to give you an idea of how it works, so if you go into the meat department, you would choose beef, and hopefully this will give you a sense of the depth of what we offer in fresh. So if you were to go into meat, you go into beef, and then you would choose different types of beef, whether it be Angus or prime or grass or prepped, and then different cuts. Here, you would go into, say, Angus, no antibiotics, right? So antibiotic free. You see local harvest, you would click on customize. You would choose the thickness that you wanted, from a 1/2 inch to 2 inches. You would choose whether or not you want vacuum packaging. You would choose how many you want. You add it to your cart, and it confirms 2 in your cart. Then we have 2 cutoffs a day. We have 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night, where we say, okay, no more orders for tomorrow. And we have literally thousands of people that are coming in to the manufacturing facility right here in New York, and we're cutting meat, cutting fish, slicing cheeses, baking in the bakery, picking produce, and all of that product gets put into totes throughout the building. It's a big building, it's about 400,000 square feet. And those totes get put onto conveyors. The items get taken out and scanned into specific customer boxes. There's a little bit of magic, and you end up with a Fresh Direct box with all the different ingredients for the individual consumer. Those boxes go onto our trucks. The trucks go out, delivery guy makes them, and look how happy people are when they get their deliveries. This is a more recent number, 600 billion in the U.S. grocery market, but even 15 years ago it was a substantial number, and we saw that as a big opportunity. Were you guys at the last? Was anybody here?
Some of them were at demo day.
I was in demo day.
You were. Anybody else? Okay, why don't I tell you a quick story that's probably pretty relevant. We'll break on this for a second, because people often ask how I got into it or how we started here. I started out as a cook when I was 17. I was a dishwasher, actually. I got done with high school, getting ready to go to college. I got a job as a dishwasher for the summer, in a restaurant. And at the other end of the summer, I realized I really like cooking and I really like food, and I wasn't going to go to college. So I told my parents, who are a lawyer and a doctor, I wasn't going to go to college. I was going to be a cook. And they lost their shit. They really got upset with me. And there were a couple deals. One, I had to go to cooking school, and 2, I had to be really good at it. So I didn't follow exactly their path. I saved up a couple $1,000s, and I moved to France because I really wanted to learn French food. And I heard a few accents in the room, so it sounds like there's a lot of people that have come here and done similar things. I hadn't really worked out my plan that well. And I realized I was on an Air France flight, and as I was landing at Charles de Gaulle, I didn't work out all the details. I didn't have a job. nor did I have any working papers. I had nowhere to stay that night. I didn't know a single person, and I, probably most importantly, I didn't speak a word of French. So it was a challenge, and I got really, really lucky. Long story short, I ended up working, getting a job for a 3-star Michelin chef. At the time, he was the last chef to have 3 Michelin stars, and the way I got the job was, I was so scared to leave my crappy little hotel room in Paris. I would only go downstairs to this cafe, and one day a bunch of Japanese guys came in, and one of them spoke English, and we started talking, and they said, well, we're going to work for Bernard Loiseau, who is a famous French chef, and he's opening up a restaurant in Japan. So he's hired us to run his restaurant in Japan, so we're going to train with him. And I said, fantastic. Can I come with you? And they said, sure, come. So I got on a train with them. I checked out of my hotel, and we traveled about 4 hours into Burgundy. This was in September, October. And I remember walking up this really big hill, and I was about 18 years old, and with my bag, and there was about 8 of us, and 7 Japanese and me. And they all sort of, the chef greeted them at the entrance. It was a beautiful inn. And he said, welcome, welcome, welcome. With me, he said, stop. Who are you? And I said, I'm here. And he said, go away. So I left, and I went across the street. There was a little hotel, and I had nowhere else to go. So I just hung out in the cafe down there every day. And eventually the cooks came over, and one of them said, come on, let me see if I can't get you a job there. That's how I got in there, and I ended up working for him for a bunch of years. I met David Boulay. You guys know Boulay? You heard of Boulay in New York? I met him and when I was there. He came over to tour different restaurants, and he gave me his card. He said, why don't you come work for me in New York? So I said, great. So I left, and I came to work for him in New York, and I worked for him for a bunch of years. Then he helped me get a job at a restaurant as the executive chef. I'm probably about 25 now, of a restaurant called One if by Land, Two if by Sea. And it was sort of a really famous, well-known restaurant, beautiful, but sort of staid, and the waiters wore tuxedos, and the food wasn't terribly inspiring. And they wanted to have inspiring food, and because it was coming from Boulay, he said, we're going to invest $1 million in the kitchen, you increase your staff, and we really want to ramp it up. And that's just what we did. And in pretty short order, we were turning out really, really good food, and we were starting to get recognized for it. I got one night, that year, a guy came in, and he gave me his card. He said, hey, so it was a woman actually, I'm starting a new TV station where we focus on cooking. And maybe you want to do a TV show on it. You could do one of the shows. It was called the TV Food Network. I said, great. So all of a sudden now I've got a show on the Food Network. It wasn't a show, it was a series of shows. But that started to get a lot of visibility. I was getting calls from friends in Hawaii saying I fell asleep and I heard your voice, oh my gosh, what's going on? And now my ego is really big because I'm this young kid, I'm running this big restaurant, and I'm on TV all the time. So it's hard, we have to reconstruct doors just to get my head through them because my ego is so inflated. And then, really soon after that, I got a call from Gourmet Magazine. And Gourmet Magazine said, hey, we've been into your restaurant several times and we're choosing you as one of the top 10 new chefs. And we're going to do a big magazine spread with you, and guys like Marcus Samuelson were in it, and Rocco DiSpirito, those are guys I grew up with. And I said, great, we have to make the doors even bigger now. And they sent me this beautiful chef's coat with Gourmet Magazine and top 10 chefs, and that was on the coat, and they sent me this beautiful silver pot that I hung in the kitchen engraved. And they were going to have a big press conference at Le Bernardin, which is a great restaurant in Midtown, where they were going to honor the 10 of us, and people like Boulay and Boulud would be there, and it was going to be really great. And that was a few months out, right as the magazine was coming out. So life was going along really well, and I was really convicted that my decision so far had been right, and this was a real natural talent I had, and this was really great. And the restaurant was doing well, and the only other thing I really wanted was a review in the New York Times. That's sort of the holy grail for cooks and chefs. And forget every other paper, it's the New York Times, and if you read those reviews, the best you can get is 4 stars, and I think there's probably a handful of restaurants with 4 stars, but that's what we wanted. And so we put the feelers out to her, we hired a publicist. The publicist was reaching out to Ruth Reichel, and she would never tell you when she comes because she comes in disguise. But she came, and we nailed her the first time she came in. The waiter recognized her. I was actually out. I was off that night at dinner. They called me up. I rushed back to the restaurant, even before the appetizers made it out, and we fed her and a table of 5 or 6 people, and it went really well. Plates came back clean. And the rule of thumb at the time was if she came in 3 times, it would be an okay review. If she came in 4 times, it would be a really good review. 5 times or more, you know, look out. And I think she came in 5 times or 6 times. So we were feeling pretty good about it. And but we always pretended we didn't know it was her. And then one day we got a call from the Times saying, hey, Ruth Reichel had been in. We had to pretend that we didn't know. We said, well, that's fantastic. And we're coming in to take pictures, and she's going to be on New York 1 next week. She used to go on New York 1. They would digitally impose her face, and she would give a, you know, sort of an idea of what the review was going to be like the next day. So we had a big party in my apartment. We probably had 150 people in there. 10 o'clock, she's due on. We turn off the music. 200 people are watching this one TV, and she comes on and she raves, and she says, wow, you know, this restaurant was sort of just okay, but now it's really come along, and this guy's great, and we're looking forward to seeing great things. Well, we start popping champagne and things, you know, the party's getting more festive. This is before the internet, by the way, no cell phones or anything, and we get a call from one of the cooks who had just gone down to the newsstand and picked up a newspaper. It had just come out, and the review was there, and guess how many stars?
5.
2.
5. 4 is the most you can get. 2, thank you for that. It was 1 star. And the first sentence of the review was, the first time I ate at 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, the food was so supercilious. No, the service was so supercilious and the food so absurd, I left on a mission to prevent people the misery of eating there. Now imagine, me growing up, my ego bigger and bigger, and this came out. I remember being on the subway the next morning watching people read it, just grimacing. And I said, I'm quitting. I'm getting out of cooking. I can't do this. I was an immature man-child who, with a little bit of adversity, just gave up. And I got to work, and the owner of the restaurant said, no, don't be a little bitch. Man up, and you've got a team of people that are, you know, that are counting on you, so stick with it. And go in to that dining room now with a positive attitude. And I took everything I had, and I said, okay, you're right, that's what I'm going to do. And I did, and everybody sort of did okay, and the owner was great, and everyone said, look, how could you have Gourmet Magazine saying this, and everyone else saying this, and then she says this? You can't pay attention to her. She has something out against her. I said, you're right. And we went on for another month. And then the worst was I had to go to, remember this dinner, luncheon at La Bernardin, this press luncheon where these 9 other guys were 9 other chefs were going to be there, plus all of these chefs that were the superstars were all going to be at this press event. And I said, I cannot walk into that room with 1 star. I'm not going. And everyone pressed me. I said, of course you're going. You have to go. You're being honored here. So I did. And I put on that white chef's coat they sent me with my name on it with Gourmet, and went to the restaurant. And as soon as I walked in, I remember Marcus Samuelson. You guys probably heard of him. He was there. He saw me, came up to me, gave me a big hug, and whispered in my ear, don't worry about her. So I said, okay, you're right. And that made me feel better. I grabbed a glass of champagne, and about 5 minutes later, a woman, tall blonde woman in a nice red sort of business suit, came up to me and discreetly grabbed my arm and said, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, sure, yeah. And she pulled me, I remember, she pulled me into the coat room, and she said, I'm terribly sorry, but we made a grave mistake. You're not actually in this group of top 10. And I looked down at the coat I was wearing that they sent me. They said, really? And I said, yeah. So I said, okay. And I said, okay. And I left. And I walked out of the restaurant, and I kept walking down to my apartment. I was living in the Greenwich Village. And I went into my apartment, and I shut the door. And I basically stayed in there for 2.5 years. I quit cooking, and I just didn't want to go out. I'd grown so fast, and my ego got so big. When those 2 things happened, I was just too mature to handle it. And what I ended up doing to live was, this was in the late 90s, and the stock market was going up and up and up, right? So I became a stock trader from my PC at home without any real training, which is easy to do when the market's going up. And there are these things called options that you can leverage, and you can actually make a lot of money, but it's gambling. But I did well for a couple years, and I was able to live, sort of the lifestyle I was used to. And that was, and I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life, but I wasn't really thinking about it. And then one day, remember that stock market went the other way, and down and down and down and down. And the next thing I remember is sort of rolling around on the ground in my apartment saying, my life is over for real this time because I just lost all my money. And when I left the restaurants and was living on my own, I had to go to supermarkets to shop. I couldn't take food from the restaurants anymore, which is what I did. Now remember, I worked in France in the best restaurant with guys like Boulet and these great restaurants, and we had access to a quality of food that I thought was normal. I thought ducks should look like this, and fish should look like this, and produce should look like this. And then I go into the supermarkets, and these were good supermarkets. I was down in the West Village, so back in the day at Halducci's and Jefferson Market, there was no place. And there was this disconnect between the quality of food I saw there versus what we saw there. So when I met Jason, who's now my partner, who had this idea to reconstruct the supply chain for food where we may be able to get a better quality food in, that sort of had me all in. Plus the fact that I was broke and I really love food, I saw this as a great way to get back into it, and it worked out. So to all of you new people, what are the morals of that story? One, I'll tell you, just to simplify it a little bit, things worked out okay for me, right? We ended up doing okay, and I had bought a house out at the beach out on Long Island a couple years ago, about 4 years ago, and I was moving some stuff that I had in storage. I had some stuff in storage, moved out there, and there was this big, heavy box, and it ended up in the living room. In the living room out there, there was nothing in there. There's no furniture. So I'm sitting on the floor, this wood floor, and I open up this box, and it's filled with New York Times newspapers. And I said, why do I have 30 copies of the New York Times newspaper? And I realized it was that review, which I had never actually read, which is incredible that I never actually read it. And you can Google it. I'm sure most of you will Google it after this because it's really funny. I mean, it's scathing. That first sentence was one, but the whole review was like that. But if this were my son who had that review, I would have said this is a good start, and you got in the Times, and she's saying there's potential, and you got to work harder, and she'll be back in a year or two and do it again. And that's what I didn't do. So for you guys, there will be adversity along the way, and I can tell you a million stories about Fresh Direct where I thought we're done and just give up, but we didn't. And there was a little bit maturity this time around that prevented us. But keep that story in mind as you guys hit some of the harder times. What do you think? Pretty good story, right? It's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. Okay. So that takes us up to here when we're evaluating the business, and we're saying this is, now this one, the bottom one goes forward, I forget.
Bottom one goes forward.
Yeah, okay. So 600 billion, and now we're looking at online grocery growth growing at about 25% through 2020. What did I do? See how much disaster it is.
This one goes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
It's not working.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, let's try the other one.
Maybe it's a battery.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be.
You know, I can just hit the up and down
I
button.
think we might have to do that.
I can do that. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, so. Which one is
So
it?
that's not working either.
Huh.
Martin, would you mind asking Nolan
So-
if it's a replacement?
Replacement clicker?
Both of these don't.
Yep.
I have one on our desk, our Chris desk.
Okay.
So it turns out, by the way, that I found out later. So the question, so people ask me over time, like, so Ruth Reichel, did you ever see her again? Did you let her have it? I said, no, because at the end of the day, for years I hated her because she ruined my life. But at the end of the day, she didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, it was pretty funny. I would laugh if I saw it today. And at the end of the day, it worked out. She did. It was funny though, because I think that was one of her last reviews at the Times. Because after she left there, she went to become the editor-in-chief of Gourmet Magazine, which is, you know, so I have a feeling something happened there where she sort of took over and said, no, what are you doing? You can't. I can't give him 1 star and then you guys give him this big. But I actually never did meet her, but I'm looking forward to it one day.
So break down why she was so scathing that particular review. I mean, you had so much validation from other channels.
You know, one, I don't know how scathing she really was. You can read it, you know, read it for yourself and say it was 1 star, but I think a lot of it were just my own internal expectations. And the other part was, it probably kind of sucked. You know, like it's possible that things weren't that good.
Or do you think the city was just not ready for that cuisine?
No. The city was ready. The city was ready. I think it was more. And that's the other thing I realized. And what I think I do now, I think we do a really good job with. And I guess the other thing that I would really suggest to you guys is whatever you do, it works.
It's forward.
Okay, the bottom one's forward. Gotcha. Okay, so whatever you do, you want to do it really well. And when I was cooking, I really wanted to be the best. I think in all of these businesses that you're launching, you know, the different ideas, the ones that really make it are the ones that are the best. Think about just you as a consumer, what you use in your everyday life. You generally go for the ones that are best. And that's sort of what we strive to do here. Okay, so again, 100 billion online food sales by 2020. That's interesting to us. And again, we're focusing on the food. We're focusing on, that's actually our seafood guy. Somebody was talking about BLT today. He was actually the #2 guy there for years. So we focus on fish and meat and produce, vegetables and fruit. And we don't focus on these as much over the years. Cheerios, it couldn't be about Cheerios because we knew that one day somebody was going to be able to take a drone and drop them down your chimney, and what would be our competitive advantage there? That simple box of food right there represents all sorts of challenges for us. Who grocery shops? Okay, so you actually go to the store and shop. Think about all the decisions that you make. Some of them you make even subconsciously without even realizing it. But you're doing things like looking at the eggs, right? What's the first thing when you buy some eggs? You open up to make sure they're not broken. You're choosing bananas. Some people like to buy bananas like that. Others like them like that. You're looking at the fish. You want to make sure that the fish is nice and fresh, and you're choosing your own produce. You're looking at strawberries that are red enough and not white. You're looking at grapes that are green enough and sweet. You're looking at the meat to make sure it's cut to the right thickness. Weird.
Are you looking for kids too?
That's just so I guess the segue there is there's a lot of challenges on online food. When you as a consumer go online and you order everything that you are going to eat for the week and you get a box delivered to your house, it has to be perfect. And that's really hard because food is not perfect. Fresh food isn't perfect. It has to do with seasons, it has to do with the grower, it has to do with how it's handled. So the onus was on us early on to say, how do we get the food to be as perfect as possible? And the solution for us was to do this, was to get in the air. And what we had to do is go out and find the best farmers and fishermen and ranchers, and then convince the best ones that they should give the best of what they have to us. And the only way to really do that is what we call boots on the ground. So that's my son Jackson. He was 2 there, he's 4 now. But he traveled everywhere with me then, and we ended up in some pretty cool spots. This is in Alaska, we're on little planes, we're on big planes, we're even in helicopters traveling around. And it's all with the same mission, to get boots on the ground, sharing a vision of how we're going to disrupt and change an industry. Because the food industry today, the fresh food industry, is sort of broken, right? It's primarily driven by retailers that care about a few things. They care about the cost, they care about what it looks like on the shelf, and they care about how long it's going to last. But rarely do they care about how is it going to taste, because then you're giving up on either cost or the shelf life or how it looks. And we're trying to convince all of these guys that we care mostly about the flavor of food. This is an interesting story. This was an article that I read. I don't know why the map is in French, but this was an article I read, and I said, hey, why don't we go do that? And the story was, there's this small group of fishermen off of the coast of Nova Scotia that for 3 or 4 weeks out of the year, they go swordfish fishing. And rather than fishing with a hook and a line or a long line, they use harpoons. And I thought that was really cool for a couple of reasons. One, most swordfish are caught on 20 miles of line. There's 20 miles of line that's laid out in the ocean with hooks every 100, 200 yards. And the hooks have bait on them. And they take a day to put all the lines out, and the next day they come around and they take in all the fish one by one. The problem with that is it's indiscriminate, right? So anything that goes by that can eat, that's interested in that bait is going to eat it, so you catch a lot of other stuff. The other problem with it is they go out for 4 weeks at a time. Remember that movie Perfect Storm with George Clooney? Remember they were loading out the boat? 4 weeks they're out fishing. They're catching fish on day 2. So by the time they get back to the dock, day 29, that fish is already 4 weeks old. And we're high-fiving because we think that's super fresh. These guys are only going out for 4 or 5 days at a time. And I thought that was really interesting, so I said to our seafood guy, call them up, let's buy their fish. Imagine how that went, right? We call up a random guy up in Canada, and he hangs up the phone on us. I don't know who you are, leave me alone. So, you know, taking my learnings from when I moved to France, we did the same thing. We hopped on a plane and we went to talk to those guys, and we ended up right around here, which is between the Flemish Cap and the Grand Banks, about 160 miles offshore, in this tiny little swordfish boat in 16-foot waves. That, coincidentally, those exact coordinates are where Perfect Storm took place. And we ended up on that boat. That's the crustacean frustration, out there for a week. That's the boat owner. That's the crew. Well, that's the crew. This is us. And there's the captain harpooning a swordfish. I don't know if you can see the fin of the swordfish right there. What happens is for about 3 or 4 weeks out of the year, the swordfish come to the top in this very specific part of the ocean because the water's very cold and they have to dive down to eat. So they come up to the top, they take their fin out of the water, the sun hits their fin, and that circulates the warmth throughout their body. So they'll stay up there during the day and then they'll dive at night to feed. And he goes around looking for them and he harpoons them. And we catch fish like that. Yeah. Yeah, so those fish, this is the captain that catches them for us, and he gets back to the dock. They get trucked down to New York in about 10 hours, and we've got on people's plates the next day. But those are the types of things that differentiate us, and that's what makes me happy. Those are the things that...
That's a question. How much is a fish like that worth retail?
That fish, I don't know, it's probably about 450 pounds with the weight. About $4,000, and they catch about 30 fish. They do pretty well in about 5 or 6 days. But we were in 16-foot waves over. I'll tell you another funny story. We go out, and that's not a big boat, right? You see the back of the boat? That's it. You just slide off. So I went to go to the bathroom one night, and they said, "Don't go by yourself because if you slide off, we won't find you ever again." And that happened to somebody. And as we're taking off, we're in 16-foot waves. It's pitch black. The night we're going out, you're just going up, and then it's a 40-foot boat. Right? It's only a 40-foot boat, and you feel it drop. And I said, my God, you know, and the captain was young, he was like 30 years old. I said, our lives are in this guy's hands. But he seemed pretty confident. And then he reaches down, I'm up on the bridge with him, and then he reaches down and he pulls out a bag of pop like this. And he says, hey, you know, we don't drink on the boat, but the guys, you know, all they're doing is staring at the water looking for swordfish all day, so they smoke a lot of pot. Are you okay with that? I said, oh my God. We're gonna die. But it was good, yeah.
So if Fresh doesn't sell this fish, I guess where does that fish go?
Whole Foods.
Whole Foods. It takes a lot longer to get there than Fresh or?
No, Whole Foods does a good job. They do the same thing as us. But we're the only 2 people that they sell to.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, in fact, there's not a lot, so there's not enough fish. So we, I don't know. So I'll tell you what, so that's a good example. So there's not a lot of these fish. Whole Foods wants a lot, we want a lot. How do you get them to give us more? Well, we went out on this trip. Now, one of the guys with us was a reporter that I took with me who wrote a story on it. He sent me the story. It was in Edible, I think, Edible magazine. So what we did was, a couple months later, it was in December, the article came out, we had it framed, we jumped on a plane, we drove 4 hours in a blizzard, 2 days before Christmas, and we went to see these guys. And we gave them this framed picture, had dinner with them, and flew back home. But little things like that go a long way to showing our commitment. So now, next week, when the season opens up, we're gonna get what we want. But it's sort of those types of things that you have to do to really build the relationships. Bananas, right? So bananas are a big one. People say, should you eat organic or conventional? I don't know. I mean, I could tell you I prefer eating organic after what I saw. But we ended up down in Machalo in Ecuador, which is a big banana capital. And we met guys like that who were growing bananas for us. That's what they look like when they come off of the plant, and that's what they taste like. Look how good those taste. But we have that relationship. We're in Alaska. We just got back from Alaska last week because the Alaskan salmon season opened up. You may have seen that, right? You see Alaskan salmon all over. The Copper River season just opened up. That's the port. This was a couple years ago, but that's the port in Cordova. That's Mike. He's our seafood buyer, so he was out there with them this year as well. And that's the crew. And we're catching sockeyes that look like that, and look at that king salmon. Look how beautiful that is. This is Kyle Matheson's to Milt. You may have seen that brand out there. He grows cherries. He's probably the best cherry grower in the country. Really, really big company. And look at me, there I am picking cherries with him. Because we really just wanted to understand what it is that they do. And we got red cherries that look like that and white cherries that look like that. We're in Italy, in Sicily, right? We do a special olive oil called Novello that's unfiltered. So we're in Sicily, in olive groves like that, with olives like that. That's the woman that owned the land. And we followed those olives all the way back to the plant where they were getting processed into oil. That's ours, just for us. We even do stuff locally. This is in Montauk. This is Sean, our oyster guy, who gets oysters for us that look like that. We're in Nantucket for Nantucket Bay scallops with fishermen like this, getting scallops like that. And shrimp are a big one for us. So we're in places like New Orleans and Texas and Argentina for red shrimp that look like that and like that. We've got a lobster guy up in Maine who's getting our lobsters. This is probably the best melon grower in the country out of Yuma in California that gets us melons that look like that. That's sandstone melons. And we've got
how do you know she's the best? Like, do you go to many different growers?
So here's the deal, melons.
Just like any,
Well, when you think about like cantaloupes, right? So that's a variety of cantaloupe. When you think about cantaloupes, the way it works, you probably see Del Monte, you'll see different brands on cantaloupes. They plant giant fields like this. They put all the seeds out, and then all the plants come up, and the fruit starts growing. At some point, they say, okay, let's harvest. But the way they harvest is they take giant machines that go through and mechanically pull all the fruit. The problem with it, all the fruit doesn't ripen at the same time. So in a field, there'll be 2 that are ripe, but there'll be 20 next to it that aren't ripe. But they sort of indiscriminately take in all the melons at the same time. What she does, I mean, this is legit. This is how she dresses. She owns the company. And she wears that hat and this headpiece, and she's got that giant knife on her side. What she does is she's out in the field with the workers every day, and they go patch by patch. And she's taking that knife and chopping them open and tasting them. And when she finds a patch that's right, she'll pull just that patch and she leaves the next one for the next day. And they go through the field every day for 15 days. They also start with different seeds that are better. This is Noble down in Florida for our pomelos and our tangerines. And this is Drew, who grows all of our lambs. Yeah, let's go past that. And this is
cute things are delicious.
And this is,
I know. I just thought it was cute.
Yeah, no, they're cute. They're tasty too, though. And that's where they live, right? What a nice home for the lambs. And we've got people growing hogs for us, and cattle, and chickens. And these are our turkeys. These are organic turkeys for Thanksgiving. That's where they live. And that's Stefan, who heads up our meat buying, and he's actually, this was him out last summer looking at our turkeys that were just hatched for Thanksgiving. And he spends a lot of time not just in the field, but he also spends time in the abattoir, or the processing plants where they're actually slaughtering and killing them, working with both the grower and the processors to try to make it even better. So they're there inspecting sides of beef so that we can get ribeyes that look like that. And we've got hens that are laying eggs for us for our fresh direct bread. Okay, this is a really interesting story too. And again, this is just our business, but you can think about things the same way. So we have somebody growing eggs for us, organic eggs, and I'm out visiting the egg farm. And one nice thing about our business that you guys should feel comfortable with too is pretend you know nothing. Because in reality, you don't, right? Once you get into food, you don't know anything. Because every one of the people I just mentioned, that's all they do. Their entire lives is focus on salmon, or tangerines, or pomelos, or peaches, or cherries. So we know relatively little compared to them, so you can ask questions. So we're at this egg farm, and I'm watching these eggs come down a conveyor, and I see people pulling out eggs from time to time. And those, it's hard to tell from here, but they were pulling out little eggs like this big. And I said, well, what are you doing with those eggs? She's like, well, they're no good. We get rid of them. I go, oh, what do you mean you get rid of them? What's wrong with them? She goes, well, they're too small. I said, I see they're small, but why are they no good? I said, do they not taste good? She said, no, they taste better. I said, they're not as fresh, did they not hold up? She goes, no, they're better. I was like, wait, so if they taste better and they're firmer, why are they no good? She said, well, nobody wants them. I said, well, why doesn't anybody want them? She goes, because everyone wants large eggs. I said, why? That's it. Sometimes you just pose the question, why? Why do you want large eggs? So when you go to the supermarket, what are you buying? You're probably buying jumbo, extra large. Why? What does it matter with the difference in the size of the egg? So I said, well, tell me about these eggs. So here's the story with eggs. Chickens lay eggs. Hens lay eggs about 6 a week. Hens lay eggs. Yep, hens lay eggs. 6 eggs a week. From the time they're about 12 weeks old until the time they're about 60 weeks old. So for about a year, they're laying 6 eggs a week. After 60 weeks old, their production goes down. Until they're 12 weeks old, they're laying less and they're really small. I said, well, if they're really small, what does that mean? She said, well, the chickens, they're younger chickens, so their bodies aren't as stressed. So the shells are firmer and the whites are really firm. And the yolks are yellower because they are pickier about what they eat and they're just eating the corn. I was like, holy cow, so you're telling me these eggs are better? She said, yeah, they're better. I said, so what do you do with them now? She said, we sell them to somebody for 10 cents on the dollar. And they crack them and sell them to bakeries. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. So what do? We went out and we built a special container to hold small eggs. We held a press conference downtown or uptown from here, and we invited people like Florence Fabricant and somebody from Oprah, and we had a chef in and we did a breakfast and we taught everybody about small eggs. So now we sell these. We're on our site right now. Every 3 months we have a new flock that comes up and we sell them at a premium, not for 10 cents on the dollar, and we give that premium to the farmer. So when everybody talks about organics and saying, oh, I'd love to eat organics, but it's so expensive, we have to examine why is it expensive. In this case, we're making organic eggs more expensive than they should be because we're not getting the yield out of them because we're throwing out 12–15% of them. So now we flipped it around and we're utilizing that 12–15% and actually getting more money for it. And all it takes is a little bit of, a couple questions of why. Why does this happen? Okay, so we have honey. We sell honey, but we're also, that's us. That's not me, but it's our team, out meeting the bees. And this is Tama. You guys may have seen her on the food talk show circuit. She's a forager. She's a local forager, and she forages for us, so she gets weeds for us and morels. If you've never seen her TED Talks, they're really good. So she gets all of our local forage product, and we've got people growing tomatoes and corn and avocados and red grapes and green grapes and white garlic and yellow potatoes and red carrots. And this guy right here, Dave Jackson, he's probably the best stone fruit grower in the country. And he called us up a couple years ago, or last year, and said, hey, I want you to come out. I've got some new varieties of stone fruit that are going to knock your socks off, and I want you to come out and try them. So we were out there trying fruit that's not even going to be in the market. We actually, this year, we're getting some of it. But this is fruit that's not even going to be in the market for a couple more years, and he's really interested in our opinion. Look how interested he is. And sometimes when we see stuff, but by the same token, again, there's my son. That's at Driscoll's. When we taste stuff that's not good, we're giving constructive feedback to help show. And the point that I was trying to make is we could spend more money here. So investing in better tasting, better quality food, there is a market for it where people are willing to pay more, maybe buy a little bit less, but the food that they're buying, they're paying more. So I don't know if you've seen, I should have brought some today. Maybe I'll send some to you guys tomorrow. Driscoll's has a new blackberry that's out there. It'll just knock your socks out. Unless you get them from us, you haven't seen it because they're giving them all to us right now. There's a few in town, but not much. And we've got like the Ori Clementines and Backyard Farms tomatoes and the family tree blueberries that are the size of quarters and the Sumo tangerines and strawberries that we fly in from California and the Gator Farm avocados and strawberry clementines and half mile to the moon cherries. And then we try to tell the stories behind them. So part of our proposition to the growers is you give us the best stuff and we'll tell your story, which is sort of, I think, a lot of what you guys want too, right? You want to be able to tell your story out there, and there's an example with Red Jacket Orchards. The other thing that we did that I thought was pretty interesting is we rated all of our produce, and again, it's thinking about it a little bit differently. You go into a supermarket and you buy produce, everybody thinks they can pick the right produce. Well, the reality is that's not true, right? There's no way. I grew up with melons. And they say you should scratch a melon, you should shake it, you should smell it. There's no way to tell. The only way to tell if a melon's good is you cut it open. You can't do that in a store. It'd be odd if you went through a store with a big knife cutting open melons before you bought them. So what we do is we built a star rating system where we rate all of our produce on a scale of 1 to 5 stars every day. We have a team of 6 people that go through 800 items that we sell, cutting and tasting every single one and rating it from 1 to 5 stars. Now 1 star means it's crappy, below average. What retailer in the world, who would go out there and say, don't buy this, I'm selling it, but it's not good? But our thought was, we want full transparency, and sometimes you want stuff, right? So in 2 months from now, you should not be buying citrus at all. Oranges, they're just not good in the summertime. People don't know that. Some people still want oranges. So we'll sell them to you, but we're gonna say, hey, they're not good. If you want them, we have them, but really, we don't suggest them. But conversely, we're gonna find 4 or 5 items that we rated 4.5 or 5 stars.
Do you still do well with sales when you do something 1 or 2 stars? No, significantly less, but we make it available, and we sort of understand that in the summertime our orange sales are going to go down, and in the wintertime our stone fruit sales are going to go down. But we know right now that they're going to go up, and I attribute this. We sell more produce than any other retailer in the country. We sell $32 of produce in every single order, which is a lot of produce. But that was built on trust, and it's not that we have the best produce in the country. I think we have really good produce, but we're guiding people into what's great right now. And if we could, so if you cruise around our site later and you go onto produce, you can see on the top, it should say great right now. And what we're doing is we're building up trust with people where we're saying, okay, they're telling me this isn't good, I'm not gonna buy it, and they're saying this is great, I'm gonna load up the truck with it. And then you get things like that. Just some, this was really just, this was a talk that I gave to some produce growers on the West Coast, trying to make the pitch to them that they should really elevate the quality of the fruit that they're growing, because if they do, they can help build their brand. This is what we don't ever want to be, right? So prices down, staying down. We saw that as just a losing proposition, where it's just it's a race to the bottom. And you guys all know her too. Right? Interesting. Who's that? Interesting what she did here, right? So she's a big proponent of healthier eating for kids, but I think as a country we kind of got things a little bit mixed up. Even she, Obama, the first lady, could not convince kids to eat healthier foods, and the question is why, right? Why don't kids want to eat fruits and vegetables? So she enlisted the help of Muppets, right? So now we're relying on Muppets to help us, and we've got this guy, the Cookie Monster, who's now saying eat your vegetables. There's some irony in that. But my challenge with that is look at the fruit that he's asking you. Does that fruit look particularly good? You know what it's going to be, right? You know what a Granny Smith apple tastes like. You know those green grapes aren't going to be particularly good. So we focus on how do we find fruit that actually tastes really good. Because ultimately, when you think about kids or adults or anybody, you have a stomach, right? There's only so much you can fit in your stomach, so any food that's going into it, think about this for all you food people here, there's only so much that people are going to eat. So there's got to be a reason why they're going to eat that instead of this. This was in the produce department. It's in the produce department. You can see the farmer's table right below it, Chips Ahoy and Oreos. And the truth is, Oreos taste really good, right? So you're competing against, look how good those look. And they have national holidays. I never knew that, but there's actually, so that's what the competition is, right? Oreos taste really good. You're trying to come up with products that are better for you, that taste better than that, but don't underestimate the value of food like that. And ultimately, that's what you want to end up with, right? So that was a picture I snapped last year. That was just like sitting out on the, just sitting up on our counter, eating a plum. But if we can come up with food like that, then we'll win against competition. Yeah, sure. We could do some questions. How are we doing?
When are you expanding to Dallas?
We are. So our growth plans are. So what we did is we spent a lot of time really trying to figure out what we're doing here in New York. It's a really hard, challenging model to get right, and we spent the last 15 years trying to get it right.
we're building a new facility in the Bronx that you may have read about. That is going to be the Willy Wonka food factories. It's a $250 million building that's going to be capable of 1.2 billion in sales out of just that one building. It'll be double what we're doing now. Probably before that's even fully built, we'll be opening up a building in DC and Boston. So DC, New York, Boston to get the Northeast corridor, and then we'll look at cities like Chicago, Atlanta, and the West Coast. So I don't know, Texas, it'll be a while. No, and I'm really good friends with the folks at HEB, and I don't want to compete with them. They're really good. Yeah.
So tell us about, I was wondering you tell us about your growth story. I mean, when you started the company, this concept had not been kind of validated or took to the market. How did you kind of get acceptance? How did you kind of build the supply chain and all that stuff?
Supply chain is really hard. For anybody that does co-packing, God bless you, because that's a lot easier than trying to figure it out on your own. Jason and I were talking about that yesterday. A lot of it, we just launched a new business called Food Kick that you may have not have heard about unless if you live in Brooklyn, it's worth checking out. All right.
You guys like North Sports Club?
Yeah. It's pretty sweet. It's a 1-hour delivery. It's a separate brand than Fresh Direct, but in essence, it's Fresh Direct items that's based on a
local products only, right?
Not necessarily local, but really good. It's curated. So instead of we sell 75 different fish on there, there'll be 4 or 5, but it'll be the best 4 or 5 of the day. Instead of 800 produce items, it'll be 50, but it'll be the best 50. Yeah, and it's delivered in an hour on a motorcycle or a Vespa or a bicycle, and it's no boxes, just bags. So we eliminate a lot of the complaints that people have, and that's a business that could potentially grow faster than Fresh Direct and get bigger than Fresh Direct. And I guess to part of your answer is it has to be a good product, right? So whatever you're selling has to really be good, and people have to love it. If they don't love it, it's probably not going to do that well. So Fresh Direct, when we first opened, I went to Boulay. I had dinner at Boulay one night, and he said, "So what are you up to, man?" I said, I'm starting this new. It's a supermarket online." I said, "Oh, really?" And the bill, I asked for the bill, and they said, no, Chef has it. Chef took care of it. I'm like, great. Because I think he was worried about me. And then about 3 years ago, I went back there. And, big hugs. "Hey, man, how you been?" He goes, "Don't even look at the menu. I'm cooking for you tonight." And that man gave me the biggest bill I've ever seen in my life. It was incredible. But when we first started, I would go out and people would say, "Oh, Fresh Direct, you've changed my life. You're amazing. You're a superstar." And now I go out and say Fresh Direct, "Oh yeah, you guys are great." Because the specialness of it wore off, right? It sort of became something new. Now Food Kick, I see the same way. People talk about Food Kick, they're like, "Whoa, I get it in an hour and it's delivered on a motorcycle. How cool is that?" So the offer has to be really compelling. Customer service for us was a really big piece because we knew with food it's not perfect, so we say things like, "I don't know, we could do it right now." We could call up and say, "I don't know, you pick it. I didn't like my steak, it was tough." And it could be a $35 steak, and we'd say, "We're sorry to hear that, here's $35 back." We kept a really liberal policy that way because we had to build the trust with people. Once you burn people, they don't really come back. Growth, we purposely stayed out of public markets, right? So we certainly could have gone public, but we didn't want to because we wanted to grow at our own speed, and we wanted to, really figure things out and get it right. And it's just now, 15 years later, where we feel like we understand this model and we know how to do it, and now we're going to roll out really quickly over the next 10 years. It'll be a much bigger brand. But there was just really no rush to go faster. Now we've got everybody else and their mother trying to do it. So, and there's a big ugly company that starts with an A that we have to worry about. What else? Anything else? Yeah?
I apologize, I walked in a little late for this. I'm sorry. Could you talk a little bit to your prepared foods and like how they fit into your model?
Yeah.
Growth there?
Yeah. So what I say to folks a lot is, you saw some of those pictures. We'll end up in Patagonia trying to find shrimp, or in Scotland where we're doing things with beef, or across this country. And we have to do that for the fresh food. The prepared foods, we can go downstairs and do it, right? That's the beauty of the prepared foods, where you don't have to rely just on the raw material and you rely just on expertise. We see it as a really big integral part of the business. We've incorporated it much more in Food Kick. We're building a giant kitchen, and strategically the way we're thinking about it is we're reserving our kitchen operations to make foods that truly differentiate. So in the past we've done everything, right? We made tomato sauce in there, but the tomato sauce was fine, but I don't know if it's better than anybody else's fresh tomato sauce. So we're going to look to other people to make things like that for us, and then the really special stuff that you have to make in real time, we're going to make internally. I think trends are really important there, you know, staying on top of that. When you look at companies like Blue Apron, you know, there's a lot of people jumping in, but you know, we probably should have been in that game a little bit faster. Value added's a really big piece, where we're seeing people don't necessarily want to just take something and pop it in the microwave, but if you can give them, you know, a grain, you know, some sort of grain salad, and give them some sort of vegetable that's already sauteed off a little bit, and then a raw protein like a piece of Alaskan salmon, and you can cook the protein, you can warm up the vegetables, and you can toss the grains, and all of a sudden you have dinner. That's much more attractive to the consumers than just taking a finished dish and putting it in. You know, there's a sense of doing it yourself. So we're heading more and more down that path, as opposed to, and we think about it not just as prepared foods, but full meal solutions, right? So there's all different types of solutions that people want. Some want the fully cooked, some want the prep, some want a recipe where they do everything from scratch, and we're going to try to fill out over the next 3 years a complete meal solution.
Any specific trends you're looking at? I know you mentioned trends.
Yeah, so ethnic, you know, continues to, you know, be super popular, and then the other trend is where people are, you know, it's partial cooking, where people are doing things at home. The whole value-added piece, where you know you don't have to make the marinade yourself, but there's a really good, interesting marinade. You know, letting people having the sense that you know, that they've done something themselves without having to do all of the work, I think, is where it all stems off of that. And then there are different avenues to go down.
Are there more?
Healthy, organic, GMO is a big one, right? People are super interested in GMO, antibiotic-free.
And mortar shops, is that compatible with your strategy of rolling out?
More what?
Mortar shops.
Bricks and mortar shops, no. I mean, our thought is, this is the right way to sell food. Some of the fundamental problems we saw with bricks and mortar shops is it all centers around the supply chain, right? So you have a load of produce that comes from California. We're selling that produce even before it's already in our building, right? So we're selling 7 days out. Or fish that's being flown in from Alaska. We're selling fish now for the next 7 days. Whereas in a store, it doesn't get sold until it's actually in the store. That fish can come into our facility and be out the next day. Alternatively, in bricks and mortar, it would go into a distribution center. From the distribution center, it would be shipped to a store. From the store, it would go into the back room of the store. From the back room of the store, it would go into the case. From the case, it would go into a customer's cart. From the customer's cart, it would go into a customer's car or a bag that they walk home with. At this time of year, it's going to be pretty hot. Then it goes into the fridge. With us, it's from the farm into our facility, from our facility into a customer's fridge. So we think the supply chain piece is really critical to, that's how you change the quality of food. You see a lot of bricks and mortar people that are trying to get into it, sort of, right? They sort of add it on, but it's sort of a half-assed approach. It's like, hey, we need to be online, so let's pick out of the store. I think the pure play is really the only way to do it, where you have a dedicated processing. I mean, that facility, I wasn't being facetious, we have 1,200 people that are coming in every night to cut fish and meat and pick produce. The only thing that's interesting for us on bricks and mortar is maybe a concept store as we go into new cities to get people to try to understand what it is that we do.
Some of my favorite things to buy on Fresh Track, number one is the par-baked rosemary focaccia roll.
Ciabatta or the rolls? Ciabatta rolls, yeah.
Change my, and the bread bowls.
And the chocolate bread bowl?
No, the ones I'll make like clam chowders.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But I also love that you have strategic partnerships with businesses like Rosa Mexicana. So how did that come about, and are you still looking for strategic partnerships?
So I actually started those, and we stopped them. The reason we started them was we wanted to get into prepared foods, and as a chef, I learned the hard way that it's all about brand, and we didn't really have a brand. Nobody knew who we were, and we were a supermarket. Because I was cooking, I knew people like Danny Myers at the Union Square Group, so we got Tabla. I knew Howard Greenstone at Rosa, so we got him. Terrence Brennan, and the reason I wanted to use them was to help build a brand from the beginning, right? So here are these chefs that are sort of endorsing and saying these are our recipes, and that sort of wore off onto us. Over time, it just logistically it didn't. It just didn't make the most sense for us. So we still have, I obviously still have good relationships with those guys, but it's more interesting for us to build our own brand as opposed to developing others on the prepared food side. Now, on the fresh side, when you think about the meat and the produce and the fish, that's integral to our model. So I'll say to somebody like Driscoll's, the berries, we're the only company that they don't short. And shorting means they pick strawberries today or raspberries, they have 500,000 raspberries. They have orders for 600,000 raspberries. The way that works is everybody gets 10% less or 20% less. With us, we get exactly what we order, because my argument to them was, we're building your brand. You go into a supermarket, nobody knows who your product is. We're selling yours by Ocean Mist or Driscoll's or Backyard Farms or Red Jacket Orchards or Lyle Wells or whoever. We have hundreds of them. So we work really hard on building the brand of the growers and the fishermen, but not so much on the prepared foods now. It was effective.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
What about also like private label? Do you guys do any private label?
Yeah, we just started that a couple years ago. The brand is Just. I was just looking at some stuff now. So that olive oil you saw, that's under our brand. Now, the way we think about private label is a little bit different. Private label is just a dirty business, I think. Private label is retailers going out, chopping down the cost from the manufacturer and put their own name on it because they say you don't have to pay marketing. What we do is we go out and we find really good growers or manufacturers, and we said we're going to co-brand. So these are going, so in the case of those farmers' eggs, they were Fresh Direct Farmers' Eggs by Alderfer Farms, and we tell the story of Alderfer Farms. And we've built our private brand on a couple things. One, transparency, largely local, right? If it's a local product, it would be local, and more wholesome than not. So milk is an example. With our Just milk, almost every other milk out there, well, all the milks, when you think about Stonyfield or Horizon in organics, they're all ultra pasteurized, and all that means is it's a higher temperature for a longer period of time. The downside of that, the upside is you get a longer shelf life. Well, it was 40 days. The downside of it is you kill a lot of the bacteria that's actually good bacteria. So ours is pasteurized but not ultra pasteurized. Downside is it's only a 12-day shelf life. Upside is it's better for you. Because of our model, we can actually offer that, whereas other people couldn't, because they couldn't get it through the system fast enough.
So could you talk a little bit to who your core customer is, and also a little bit randomly, if you do a big baby business, baby food business?
Yeah, so we break it into 4 customer segments. I probably won't remember them all. The main one, our main is Joy of Food, and those are people that just really enjoy cooking, right? Those are people that enjoy cooking, have a higher spend on fresh food, who will spend more time on the site, larger household income, and more than 2 people in the house generally. Food is fuel, would be people that care less about about trendy new foods, but they want to eat and they use it for fuel, and they want to get in and off of the site pretty quickly, and probably a little bit more cost conscious. The other really big category, I forget how we label them, but it's basically the family, right? And that's with generally the mom that's shopping, large basket, and again, heavily on fresh. And then the last one is just the infrequents, people that are in and out. More than 50% of our business is from that one segment. What was the second question? The second part of it? Oh, baby. Baby is an interesting one. One of the problems that we have as a business, one of the big fundamental mistakes we made was we did not allow for enough space. And I got into this in the beginning. I should probably hit on that. One of the biggest mistakes we made was the assumption that we don't need to sell a lot of packaged goods because we're going to be so good in fresh, customers are just going to come to us and tough noogies if they can't get the size Cheerios that they want. That was a fundamental mistake. At the time it sort of worked okay because there was nobody else. Now we've got people like Amazon saying, I have 12 sizes of Cheerios and I'll drop them down your chimney. So we're working on our new facility to figure that out. And baby sort of falls into that. To really do baby well, it's a pretty big assortment that you need and we just don't have the space for it. So we are going to focus just on food, right? As a food company, we're going to focus on trying to be sort of the best in baby food in terms of selection and different types of baby food.
One more question. So you mentioned sort of going away from like the branded sort of restaurant prepared foods.
Yeah.
And then sort of do more sort of your own fresh direct.
Yeah.
So what's the direction you're going on there? How are you going to roll that out? What sort of the different segments you could be serving?
So what we found was now we've actually built a brand with Fresh Direct, and I think that started with the fresh foods where people sort of trusted. So basically anything that we put our name on now has developed, at least with our core consumers, a level of trust where we actually outsell national brands in the beginning. And the way we introduce new items is, well, I mean, what do we have this week? We're doing, soon we're coming up with a new tuna. So I don't know how much you know about tuna fish, right? But tuna fish is really cheap, bumblebee, sunfish, and it's really disgusting if you learn how it's boiled, how it's made. And, you know, there's things like vegetable broth in it, and it's just not good. So we've got a guy on the West Coast who is catching albacore for us. He goes out and he catches the albacore and we're canning it, and he's gonna get all of our fish. I'm actually going out fishing with him, which will be a cool trip, because he's a wild man. And this fish this canned tuna will cost $6 a can versus say 99 cents a can. But when you think about a mom or a dad that's gonna feed their kid, it's so much better and it's so much more wholesome and it's such a better product, but people just don't know. So the question is, how do you do that? So we're going to have a press conference similar to what we did with the eggs, where we're going to show, actually let people eat it and cook it. We're going to have emails that go out to our customers sort of telling the story. We'll have videos. We're taking a videographer with us on the boat, and there'll be a place on the site where it will live, where people will be able to get down pretty deep into it. Additionally, when you search for tuna, that's what will come up before say bumblebee. Yeah, you waited the whole time. Yeah.
So me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've never shopped at first sight because I wanna see what it looks like when I buy the first things like fish and what that smells like.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you gonna educate the customer like me?
Yeah.
Like how are you gonna educate the whole process that you just explained to us?
So that's our challenge, and so when we first opened the business, we have more people in this room than we had customers the first day. We had 12 people, 12 customers, imagine that. So we couldn't do anything of what I was talking about here. We bought all of our produce from the Hunts Point Terminal Market. We bought our fish from the Fulton Fish Market with a push cart the first couple of weeks. And it took us years and years to get up to the point where we're knocking down 150 head of cattle a week and 75 lambs a week. It took us a while to get to that volume to where now I'm really proud of it. So now what we're doing is we're investing heavily in marketing. So we have a marketing team, we have a digital team, we have a video guy that just sort of follows us around now. And over the next couple of years, I'm on the road a lot, sort of telling stories and giving talks, and eventually it'll make its way out. And probably more importantly, once we do get people in, people are just pleasantly surprised. What we see in our research is people are shocked at the quality, saying, oh my gosh, I never knew that. They still don't know the stories, but we're starting to tell those stories now, and that'll happen over time, but it's going to be a gradual process.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, guys. Your turn next. You guys are up next week, right?
Yeah.
You guys are all going to present up there? It's going to be great? You got trained? Bring your trained?
Make sure it's good battery.